根据国际清算银行 BIS 的数据，2026年第一季度加拿大房价持续下跌，名义房价指数 Nominal Index 今年第一季度按季下降0.8%，按年下降4.8%，自2022年第一季度高点以来，累计下跌20.1%。若将通胀因素纳入考量，实际房价跌幅更为明显。实际房价指数 Real Index 今年第一季度按季下跌1.3%，按年下跌6.8%。经通胀调整后的房价已回落至2016年水平。
Well, I think the real index is really, it's really interesting because that deals with inflation. That nominal index is just kind of how the prices have changed over this period of time. But what you have to do is factor in the role of inflation and really kind of understand how those prices, once they factor in inflation, really mean towards real price change. Because I think it's, over the last actually within the last decade, we've certainly seen the role of inflation kind of come in and really, I think, have an effect, whereas in previous years there's probably a bit of a less of an effect. And I think that it's really important to kind of keep in mind the difference between real and nominal.
西蒙菲沙大学城市研究设计主任 Andy 燕说，房价走势从来不是单一因素决定，而是受到经济、人口与住房政策等多重因素共同影响。
Part of it goes into the role of finance, the role of interest rates, the ease of getting loans. I think the issue goes into employment. It goes into both the quality of jobs and then the levels of income. I think this goes into population growth and really how population growth over this time has cooled off. Certainly population growth through immigration. You can imagine that when it came to temporary residency, the kind of major changes that have occurred at the federal level has actually meant there's a lot less temporary residents coming into Canada. And also really, I think one should also note the kind of policies we've really kind of developed over the last decade, whether it goes in around the empty homes, housing speculation, etc.
尽管加拿大房价指数持续回落，但这并不代表民众能立即感受到住房可负担性的改善，因为家庭收入成长并未与房价变化同步。
Household incomes have not dramatically increased anywhere close to property values or rents in almost for almost 2 decades, or almost like certainly the last decade, that the amount that housing prices have increased hasn't even come close to how incomes have not. And I think that this is really one of the ongoing challenges, that we are far away from affordability. But then it's also, I think, at the core of this question, how housing prices were disconnected from local incomes, and how for many of those on local incomes, they're struggling to find stable, affordable housing. And so I think that this is really part of a longer process. Like, it's one of those things that, the answer is, well, it just takes a bit more time to kind of see what happens, that will prices lower. Like, there are indications that rents have gone down, but of course that's average rents, which means that there's some math kind of calculations.
他指出，联邦政府不久前宣布协助卑诗省部分公寓单位转作其他用途，反映当前房市已与几年前截然不同。目前市场关注的焦点已逐渐从房价转向库存问题，尤其是空置住宅和未被市场吸收的住宅单位。
Premier and the Prime Minister were talking about converting the 2,200 condominiums into something that is rent to own, and then the kind of pushback in terms of calling it a bailout. But I think that kind of comes together in really what is a very different real estate marketplace than what it was, say, 5 years ago. That after the pandemic, I think there was a particularly very hot real estate market, looking at very specific types of real estate. That I think that has changed dramatically. That I think a lot of this, for now, is really about the amount of stock that is out there, but yet we haven't necessarily seen the dramatic price changes. And I think that this is really going to be the interesting thing, is to kind of observe when those price changes might occur, or if they might occur at all.
Andy 指出， 不同世代对市场变化的感受其实相当不同。随着过去房价上涨，加上借贷成本和生活开支增加，首次置业的门槛已较20-30年前大幅提高。
In Metro Vancouver, you have, I guess one population, say, owners who have been owning for decades and paid off their homes. They're probably in pretty good shape, right? But then we also have new and young Canadians, new and young households who are just establishing themselves and who are a lot of times they're renters. But yet, as renters, a lot of them are looking for stability, and that stability, in the most part, are provided by home ownership. And I think the issue of home ownership here is really the sheer cost of becoming a homeowner now than it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. And I think that this is still an ongoing challenge for those households to both find affordable rent, much less being able to enter the real estate market as an owner. That I think that still is challenging, given the kind of costs that are involved in becoming a homeowner relative to your income. And I think that this is still an ongoing challenge for those new and young households in metropolitan Vancouver and in a place like Vancouver.
谈到改善住房可负担性的方案，安迪言认为，除了增加市场供应之外，政府也需要扩大对非市场住房的投资，并推动更均衡的经济发展。
A lot of it goes into a reinvestment in non-market housing, and to understand that when it comes to market housing, it can provide some of the housing, but not all of the housing. You have to know that for over 30 years, the federal government has not really invested in non-market housing. There has been some improvements over the last, 5 or 7 years, but the deficit, like the typical OECD country, is about 7.5%. Around that percentage is non-market housing. In Canada, it's barely 3.5. Right? That at that percent of non-market housing, you're expecting the market system to produce housing for a population where it can't. And I think that's been, one of the particular struggles in this marketplace.
他认为，加拿大需要建立一个更多元、更平衡的经济体系，而不应该过度依赖房地产市场作为经济成长的主要动力。